Hey friends, welcome to the Long Way Through Scripture. I'm Katherine Schaefer. So, this is a slow week by week walk through the Bible, taken without rush or pressure in case you're new. Each week, we'll gently orient ourselves to where we are in Scripture, what kind of ground we're walking on, and one simple reflection to carry with us as we read. This isn't a daily reading challenge or a checklist. You can start wherever you are, move at your own pace, pause when life gets full, or return later. There's no catching up required here, just the invitation to stay with the Word, one passage at a time. And I'm really glad you're here. So let's begin. Week 8, Numbers 1 through 20. Learning to walk between promise and reality. So as we open the book of Numbers, the story begins to move again. After the stillness and formation of Leviticus, the people are preparing to travel. The wilderness is no longer behind them as a memory, it is ahead of them as a path. The tone shifts from learning how to live with God's presence to learning how to follow Him through uncertainty. There is a different kind of energy in this transition. Formation is quiet work. Movement exposes what formation has produced. The people are no longer standing still around the tabernacle, learning rhythms of holiness. Now, they must carry those rhythms with them into a landscape that will not always feel stable or predictable. The opening chapters can feel surprisingly administrative. There are census, camp arrangements, roles assigned to different groups, and instructions for how the community is to move together. At first glance, it can feel like a pause in the story, but it's actually a moment of preparation. The people are not wandering aimlessly. They are being organized into a community that can travel with intention. And there's something grounding about the level of detail. Every tribe is counted. Every person matters enough to be seen, even in the vastness of the wilderness. The community is not anonymous. Their movement is not chaotic. It is structured, deliberate, almost careful in its pacing. And this reminds us that God's guidance often shows up not only in dramatic moments, but in the quiet ordering of ordinary steps. Every tribe has a place. Every group has a role. Even the way the camp is arranged reflects something deeper than logistics. The presence of God remains at the center, and everything else is oriented around Him. This is not just about movement, it's about identity. The people are learning that their journey is not random. It is ordered, purposeful, and guided. And as the story unfolds, the tone becomes more human, more familiar. Complaints begin to surface. The people grow tired of uncertainty, of manna, of discomfort of wilderness living. They're longing for the stability of Egypt, even with all its suffering. Reveals something deeply recognizable. Freedom can feel disorienting. The promise of something new often comes with the ache of leaving what was known. There's an honesty here that makes this part of Scripture feel close to our own experience. Growth rarely feels as triumphant as we imagine it will. Even when we know we are moving towards something good, there is often a quiet grief for what is being left behind. The wilderness becomes a place where those mixed emotions surface, where hope and nostalgia exist side by side. And Moses, too, shows the strain of leadership. He is not portrayed as unshakable or endlessly patient. He feels the weight of responsibility, the exhaustion of carrying the needs and frustrations of an entire community. The narrative does not hide this tension. It allows us to see that even faithful leaders wrestle with limits, frustration, and the need for help. This honesty deepens the story. Leadership here is not about perfection. It is about perseverance, continuing to walk forward even when the path feels heavy. Moses' experience reminds us that calling does not remove the reality of human fatigue. It simply places it within a larger story of purpose. The journey continues with moments of both provision and resistance. God provides guidance, direction, and presence, yet the people repeatedly struggle to trust what they cannot yet see. And this tension reaches a turning point when the spies are sent into the land that has been promised to them. Their report is complex. The land is indeed good, full of possibility and abundance, but it is also intimidating. The people who live there are strong, the city is fortified, the future uncertain. Fear begins to overshadow trust, and the community stands at crossroads. They must decide whether to move forward into the unknown with God or retreat into the familiarity of fear. This moment feels deeply human. The promise is not questioned because it is unclear. It is questioned because it feels overwhelming. The gap between what God has said and what the people feel capable of becomes painfully visible. And in that gap, fear finds room to grow. Their choice shapes the rest of the narrative. The wilderness becomes not just a place they pass through, but a place they remain in longer than expected. The journey slows, not because God's promise has changed, but because trust takes time to grow. The people are learning, sometimes painfully, that following God is not only about being rescued, it is about learning to trust Him when the path is unclear. And there's a quiet lesson here about the pace of spiritual growth. Transformation rarely happens as quickly as we would like. The wilderness becomes a classroom, not a punishment alone, but a place where dependence deepens and identity is reshaped. As we move further into the chapters, we see a series of events that reveal the complexity of life in the wilderness. There are moments of rebellion, grace, discipline, and moments of provision. The story does not flatten the experience into a simple lesson. It reflects the reality of spiritual growth, uneven, imperfect, filled with both progress and setbacks. Again and again, the people reach the edge of trust and pull back. And again, God meets them there. Sometimes with correction, sometimes with provision, but always with presence. The relationship continues even in tension, in frustration, even in disappointment. One of the most striking threads through this section is how consistently God remains present. Even when the people resist, even when they question, they struggle to believe, the presence of God does not vanish. Guidance continues. Provision continues. The relationship is strained at times, but it is not abandoned. This steadiness becomes one of the defining features of the wilderness experience. The people are not sustained by their own faithfulness alone. They are sustained by God's commitment to remain with them. His presence does not fluctuate with their emotional state. It is constant even when their trust is not. The wilderness becomes a place of formation rather than merely a place of delay. It is where the people learn who they are, where they confront their fears, where they begin to understand that the journey itself is shaping them as much as the destination ever could. Time begins to pass differently in these chapters. Loss is felt, transitions happen, leaders age, generations begin to shift. The story slows enough for us to see that faith is not only built in dramatic moments, but in long stretches of ordinary endurance. By the time we reach chapter 20, the community has experienced grief, change, and the passage of years, yet the promise remains, the direction remains, and the presence remains. The path may feel long, but it is not directionless. Numbers, at its heart, is a book about living in between what has been promised and what has not yet been realized. It captures the emotional landscape of faith in a way few other books do. There is excitement, doubt, frustration, hope, and perseverance all woven together. So as you read through these chapters this week, you may notice how familiar the rhythm feels. Moments of trust followed by moments of uncertainty, seasons of clarity followed by seasons of questioning. The wilderness is not only a physical place in the story, it is also a metaphor for the spaces we inhabit when life is unfolding but not yet resolved. And yet, even here, the story does not feel abandoned. It feels held. The tension does not erase the promise. It simply stretches the space between expectation and fulfillment. The reflection to carry with you this week is this: God's presence does not depend on perfect faith. It remains steady even in the wilderness. You don't need to rush through this section looking for quick resolution. Let the story unfold at its natural pace. Notice the tension, the humanity, the persistence of God's guidance, even when the path feels long. Stay with the journey, the movement, and with the reminder that the wilderness is not the end of the story. It is part of how the story unfolds. And that is where this portion of the journey leaves us. Still moving forward, learning what it means to trust. So as you move into the week's reading, remember, there's no rush. Read slowly, read a little at a time, or simply sit with the passages if that's what the week allows. Scripture doesn't ask us to perform, it invites us to remain. If you'd like a gentle place to begin or restart, there's a free 5-day start here guide available on the website. And if this podcast has been meaningful to you and you'd like to help support it to continue, you can find ways to do that through Patreon. And all the links are always in the show notes. You can find the full 52-week reading plan and more information at catherineschaefer.com. Thank you for walking this long way with me. I'll meet you here again next week.